In this video, I want to go ahead and show you how to replace the radiator located right in the front of your vehicle. With the hood open, you want to go ahead and remove our air intake port right here. You're going to use our trim tool and pop the plastic button securing the front of this. Pop this button over here. Put those two buttons aside. Now we can go ahead and lift up on our air intake tube. We want to pull it out of the rubber seal right here. Set it aside. And go ahead and use our 10mm gear wrench. Go ahead and loosen and remove. Let's go ahead and remove the 7 plastic push pins holding our radiator cover in place. Using our trim tool, pop up the center of the buttons. Do this for the rest of them. Once we have all those out, go ahead and lift up the cover here and set it aside. Let's remove the two 10mm bolts holding the top portion of our grill. On the inside edge of the bumper, there's going to be 2 Phillips head screws. Going to use our screwdriver. Let's loosen and remove these here. Once these are out, go ahead and repeat for the passenger side. Along the bottom of your bumper, you're going to have a series of these plastic push pin clips. Let's go ahead and use our trim tool and pop these out. Now our particular vehicle is already missing a series of these here, but if you do have them, pop them out, remove them. If yours are breaking like ours, you may have to source some new replacements. Our particular vehicle has a couple screws in here. Starting on either side, the driver or passenger side, you want to reach in on the edge of the lip here, and you're going to pull the bumper out and away from the fender. What you're doing is disconnecting the bumper itself from the bumper mounting clip in the back, and then go ahead and continue the way around underneath the headlight. As you're doing this here, continue the process around into the passenger side. Now that we have both sides disconnected, let's go ahead and grab that bumper, reach around behind the grill, and support this. Go ahead and pull it away. Go ahead and open up your radiator cap. Remove that and set it aside. On the bottom side of the engine, we have our splash shield right here. It's held in place by these plastic push pins around. So let's go ahead and use our trim tool. Pop out the center of these buttons. Now if yours break like ours are, just going to have to go ahead and source some replacement plastic buttons here. So you pretty much want to go ahead and remove all of your buttons here that are holding this shield in place, and then we'll go ahead and remove that. Up underneath here, on the low portion of our radiator, you're going to find your drain plug right here. I'm going to go ahead and turn that counterclockwise. Ours is stuck a little bit, so we're simply going to go ahead and grab a pair of pliers and gently twist that. We have our drain pan ready to catch our coolant. You want to have safety glasses. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And as you turn this counterclockwise, it should start to drain some coolant, like so. Let me go ahead and open that up a little bit more. Let that coolant drain. Now, once your coolant is drained from the radiator, go ahead and close up that drain plug here. And just go ahead and snug that down. Now, in the lower portion of our radiator here, we have our automatic transmission cooler line. We're going to use our pair of pliers. I'm going to go ahead and open up this hose clamp here. I'm going to try and slide this back. I'm going to use a pair of clamping pliers here, and what this is used for is to pinch off the hose to keep transmission fluid from coming out once we disconnect it. And we do have our drain bucket underneath just in case. We're going to use our hose pliers. Let's go ahead and loosen this. I want to go ahead and remove that from our radiator. We don't have much of a hose length here to make it easy to release, so we're going to take this off. We're going to take this here. I want to go ahead and loosen this here. What we're going to try and do is push this and slide this hose down that metal line, giving us some leeway here. We do have a little bit of transmission fluid dribbling out here. Just going to wipe that down. Let's disconnect our other transmission cooler line on the left-hand side. Going to perform the same task here. Pinch that hose clamp. Move that back. I'm going to use my pliers here just to try and break that free. Okay. Go ahead and work this hose off. Make sure you have a catch can underneath to catch any residual from that hose. We have a connector right here for one of our sensors. Now there's a spring tab on here. You can pinch and pull. Ours is stuck, so I'm just going to use these pliers here and gently pinch it and wiggle that free. Now the sensor we just popped off is held onto the base of our cooling fan shroud with a little plastic button. Just use your trim tool. You want to get in there and just pop that off. We're going to use our pliers here to go ahead and pinch our lower radiator hose clamp. It doesn't seem to want to work for us. Just need to reposition that here so we can get a tool on here and pinch this and work that back. We have room for our actual pliers to do the job. There we go. Just going to break that hose free from the radiator. I want to go ahead and grab that hose and we're just going to pull it back. Now be careful, even though we did drain the radiator, there's probably some coolant still left in this hose. Have your catch can underneath and safety glasses when doing this. And as you work the hose off, you're going to get it to a point where you can just crack the bottom. And if there's any coolant, it's just going to dribble out. We're good. We need to loosen our upper radiator hose clamp and slide that back. At this point here, we want to go ahead and lift up our AC condenser just a little bit and bring it forward so we can go ahead and start working with our radiator. I'm going to lift up our condenser with the bushings up and out. Slightly pull that forward. Try and do the same on the other side here. Next, let's go ahead and remove the bolts securing our hood latch here. Get this up and out of the way. Using our 10mm gear wrench here to get on in here and loosen and remove these bolts. Now before removing the two top bolts here, I want to make sure that when we reinstall our latch here, it's in the same exact position. Sometimes these upper holes are slotted, so we want to take precaution. I like to take a Sharpie marker and just run around here. That way there I know when I reinstall, I can match up that bracket with the marker marks and tighten them down. On the bottom side of our hood latch, let's go ahead and disconnect the harness here. I'm going to press down on that tab, separate that. On the top side here, you can see that there's a wiring harness here held on to the cooling fan shroud. We're going to use our trim tool, and you want to go ahead and disconnect these connections. There's a couple of them around the cooling fan. Pop these off. You have your expansion tank hose over here. I'll go ahead and pop this out. I'm going to separate this from the top of the radiator. We have a connector right between our two fans here. I'm going to go ahead and press in on that tab right here, and we're going to reach down and wiggle that out. disconnect that. Let's go ahead and use our pliers here. We're just going to gently twist this hose, break that free. Now we're going to reach underneath the support here, grab that hose, twist that off of the radiator. I'm going to try and tuck this hose up and back so we don't have any interference pulling that radiator out. And we have on our other fan here, we have another connector. And do the same, push on the tab. Go ahead and wiggle that connector off, like so. So before you pull that out, you want to go ahead and just double check, look around, and we can actually see that our transmission cooler lines down below have a couple of brackets bolted to the bottom part of our radiator. So we need to go back underneath and remove those bolts, and then we should be free to pull this out. Now our cooler lines come down. There's a bracket right here that goes to a 10mm bolt to the base of the radiator. I'm going to go ahead and loosen and remove that. Then there's a center one over here. Behind this transmission cooler line, there's another 10mm bolt right there. I'm going to go ahead and loosen and remove both of those. Then we should be able to go ahead and pull out our radiator. Now on the bottom side of our radiator here, we have our transmission cooler lines, and there's brackets right here. There's one here and there's one in the middle that are held on to the radiator using 10mm bolts. The bolts go through into nuts that are in the radiator. When we spun our bolt, the nut spun as well. So at this point here, in our case, we have to cut our brackets in order to remove this here. So there's a bracket here, and there's one over here in the middle. Want to be careful not to damage our cooling fans, as we will be reusing our fans. We do want to go ahead and separate those there so we can remove the radiator. Both of our brackets cut. Our transmission cooler lines are now separated from the radiator. Along the bottom here, we have a bracket being held on with a 10mm bolt. Going to loosen and remove that. That's going to allow this line to be flexible. Just want to check for any electrical connectors or hoses or harnesses that might be still attached, and we're looking pretty clear. I'm just going to slide this out. On the bottom side of your radiator, you want to go ahead and pay attention. There should be 2 rubber grommets on the bottom. They may be left in the vehicle when you pulled your radiator out. You want to go ahead and check there, but you should have these. You just want to simply swap these over. These are pretty loose on here. What we may do is put these into the vehicle and then lower our radiator down onto them. But just for now, we're going to pop those in place. On the top of your cooling fans, you're going to have 2 10mm bolts on each cooling fan. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove these. Let's go ahead and swap these fans over. You're going to lift up and pull out. On the bottom, there are plastic pins that go into tabs on the bottom of the radiator. Super simple. Insert, drop it down. Let's go ahead and get our 2 bolts started on this here. I'm going to do the same for the other one. Using our 10mm socket and ratchet, we're going to go ahead and tighten these down. Once that bolt bottoms out, give it about a 1/4 turn. You'll feel the bottom, 1/4 turn. Do the same for all 4. On the bottom of the old radiator, you want to go ahead and loosen and remove the coolant temp sensor. We're going to go ahead and use our 17mm socket and our ratchet. spin that out. Now there should be an O-ring on here to help seal that. You want to check the condition of that O-ring. If that is marked up, damaged, torn in any fashion, you definitely want to go ahead and replace that. Ours looks like it's in really good condition, so we're just going to swap that over. On the new radiator, you probably have one of these plugs here like this. Spin that counterclockwise, spin that out, install the sensor, spin that in as far as you can by hand. We just want to make that snug. You're all set. We're going to go ahead and install our lower radiator bushings. We're going to set these in cup face down, and it sits right into the radiator crossmember support right here. I'm going to repeat for the other side. And we lower our radiator down, the pins on the bottom will fit right into that and work as insulators. Lower our radiator down into place. Now at this point here, we're going to go underneath, we're going to grab the radiator and line it up onto the insulator pads underneath. That should drop right into place, and then we go ahead and start installing the rest of our components. All right, we got that. Get the driver's side down into that grommet. Go to the passenger side here. And just require a little bit of manipulation. Make sure that grommet is seated. Okay, passenger side is in. Go ahead and push our transmission cooler line up into place. So at this point here, let's go ahead and install our lower radiator hose. While we're here, just gonna go ahead and line this up. And go ahead. Wiggle that down into place. Now where your transmission cooler lines go, there's going to be these black protective caps. So we're going to grab those there, pop those little guys off. Go ahead and work that transmission cooler line in. Release this clamp, press that on. I'm going to do the same on the passenger side over here. That cap off. Pop that line in, and we can go ahead and release this clamp here. Install our hose clamps back into place here. You also want to go ahead and inspect your clamps, make sure that they're in good operating condition. If they look like they're weak, you want to go ahead and replace them. If they're super rusty, definitely replace them. You don't want to have one of these lines break off or start leaking. We're secured there. Let's install this one down here. We have our temp sensor at the base of the radiator here. We can now go ahead and press our harness tab in there, and we'll connect our wire harness to that sensor. Press that on, you'll hear it snap into place. The transmission cooler lines, they're basically still pretty stable with the securing of all these hoses here. It floats just a tiny bit, but it's not going to cause any operational issues. We do want to go ahead and bring our radiator hose clamp down into place. Make sure that this hose is down all the way, or as far as you can get it. So we are all secured down below here. Let's move back up top and secure everything up top. We're going to install the lower bolt holding this line here. You just want to snug that down. Want to go ahead and install your fan harness connectors. Just line that up, pop that into place. You can install the little harness plastic buttons here. And then come on over to the driver's side. Get this connector lined up. Pop that in. Get that little retainer button in place. Let's go ahead and install our upper radiator hose. Go ahead and get that upper radiator hose clamp lined up, secured. Let's go ahead and install our radiator support brackets here. We're going to have two of them, one on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. Get that bolt started by hand and just repeat for the passenger side. You want to go ahead and tighten those down. I'm going to install the bracket and get that bolt started. Once you get that bolt started by hand a few threads, go ahead and repeat for the passenger side. And go ahead and tighten those bolts down. Now I'm just going to go ahead and pop our radiator cap on just to protect the radiator from getting any debris in there. We are going to come back and put coolant in it later. Let's go ahead and bring our hood latch down into place. Now there is a sensor right on the bottom here for our unit. I want to go ahead and install the connector on there. Just going to line that up, push that on. You can feel it in here, it snap into place. Let's go ahead and get our bolts lined up here. I'm going to start to get those started by hand. And you can see here that our hood latch has some movement in it. Before we remove this here, we went ahead and used our Sharpie marker, which is going to be perfect because now we can line this up and tighten our bolts down. I'm going to get these two top ones snug down, lined up on that marker line. That way there our hood latches up perfect as it did before. I'm going to make sure that these bolts are pretty snug. Once those two top bolts are tight, go ahead and tighten up the bottom bolt. Once that bolt bottoms out, give it a couple good pushes here. You want these to be good and tight. You want to go ahead and install your expansion tank hose here onto that port on your radiator. Go ahead and slide that in. We'll go ahead and bring our bumper up to the vehicle. What we want to do is try and line up the bottom edge of our bumper here underneath our light assembly. I'm going to try and bring this into place. Now the bumper itself will lock into tabs underneath your headlamp assembly. Line that up, and then our bumper itself will line up on the edge here with the fender. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in our bumper side here, and then this will line up. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process for the passenger side. We have our brackets here for our upper portion of the grille. Install the bolt here on the driver's side. Once that's started a few threads, go ahead and repeat for the passenger side. Now I'm going to tighten this down using our hand ratchet because we're going to be anchoring plastic to metal. We don't want to over tighten this and crack the plastic. Once that bolt bottoms out, just give it a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and repeat for the passenger side. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and fill our cooling system. We're not going to install our under engine covers yet because we want to go ahead and have that opportunity to inspect and check for any kind of leaks. So let's go ahead and open up our radiator cap. We're going to pop that off and set it aside. You can use your funnel, get that ready to go. Make sure that you have the recommended coolant for the vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and start filling the radiator. Our radiator is pretty much topped off. I'm going to go ahead and remove our funnel here. And we're going to reinstall our radiator cap. Once your radiator is filled, go ahead and check your expansion tank over here. You want to go ahead and make sure that the level is filled up to the full mark in there. If not, you can go ahead and top that off to the full mark on the bottle, not up to the top here. Go ahead and start up the vehicle. Let it run for about 20 minutes to a half hour with the heat on full. Let the thermostat open up. As the coolant gets pulled from here, it'll pull it from the expansion tank, and then you can go ahead and top off the radiator through this here. Never open up the radiator cap after the vehicle has been run and hot. Once that's all set, go ahead and look underneath the vehicle, inspect for leaks. If everything is good, install the undercover splash guard. Go ahead and install your inner well liner to the inside of the bumper. Now you want to get this underneath here, and it can be a little bit hard, so you can go ahead and pop the side of the bumper out just a little bit. Go ahead and get that underneath. Secure that. Now we can go ahead and get our screws started. Go ahead and snug those in. Now that the driver's side is complete here, go ahead and repeat for the passenger side. And install your plastic push pins in all of our holes here for retainers. Push that button in. Basically, we're going to continue around the perimeter, installing all of our plastic push pins. Do this until they're all installed. Any of the spots that you have a bolt, simply go ahead and snug those down. You want to make sure that your radiator cover here, the little tab is underneath the chrome part of the grille. And install all of your plastic push pins. Let's go ahead and snug these down. Install your air intake tube. Work that into the rubber ring here. Go ahead and line this up, and we're going to install our plastic push pins, securing this in place.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.